Good morning. It's great to be here in a level of civility that we can permit right now because as Michigan State grad, we'll soon be in the tournament and I don't know how the relationship will be in a few weeks. So good to be here right now. The session this morning, the real of real estate going forward. Can we get to real opportunities? I actually thought there was a second title that really fits this very well. Whoops. Or, how much farther are we almost there? What in the world is going on? What a crazy world we're subjected to on a daily basis. I thought I would start out the session just flashing through a few headlines very, very quickly of the last several days and last few hours. Just glance at them real quickly. It's a mixed bag every minute, every day. Our staff is very diligent in the area of economic forecasting, and we'll admit it's a challenge to try and keep pace, to try and keep our heads on straight, trying to figure out exactly where we are headed. After much analysis, the simple terminology that comes forward to me from our head of research is it's a mixed bag. The world economy, the future. They're all mixed bags right now. You've heard it from economist after economist, and I'm going to throw a few more thoughts onto it. But it's making us severely business universe constrained. Obviously, we've all felt that. For me, it was a dreary, dark, dreary day in 2005 when it hit it. And I'm very happy about it because we were monitoring the headwinds. We were going great guns as a firm. We had projects that we were working on in 48 different countries around the world. We were into economic forecasting on behalf of our clients. We were moving in many different directions. But my staff kept feeding me information, and I called our group together in Cincinnati, Ohio, our headquarters then, and said, I don't like the headwinds. I don't like where this industry's headed. I don't like what's going on at all. I'd like everybody to start searching for jobs, and we closed down our operations because I did not want to meet the challenges of the last several years. I did join another academic institution as faculty, and they asked me to resurrect the firm as a virtual firm, and surprisingly, our clients did not let us shut down, and we were operating at full speed, doing city plans, working on development planning for developers overseas, and a number of other things. But still, it's allowed me a perspective to sort of remove myself and think about what's going on. What have these years been about? They've been a hell of a logjam with us trying to figure out how to chisel away to any success at all. That's a simple description of what we've been going through. What I'm going to give are perspectives on the real estate going forward from my standpoint of traveling around the U.S., around the world, meeting with retailers, being fortunate to be in a number of boardrooms around. I differ from most others in the room in that most of my career I've been a strategist for developers, for cities, for lenders, for equity firms. I'm not a broker, developer, asset manager. For many, these past few years have been about what's the next project, who's the next tenant, where's the next money coming from? I've had the luxury of looking out and trying to figure out where the industry, real vitality, is going to come from. Can we shift the industry into a much bigger macro look? Not for our 2 to 10 year survival for the developers, the brokers, the lenders, but for, interestingly enough, the University of Florida real estate aspirants. How do we shape this industry so it's vital again? As I talk, you can expect facts, some predictions, what the opportunities are. I'm going to talk about the real challenges that I perceive, and you can expect ramblings and reflections. at my age are allowed to do that a little bit. I'll start with some reflections on sort of epiphany moments that I reflect on a lot right now. In the early days of my career at the Rouse Company, and I think most people would agree in heritage of our industry, Jim Rouse was the epitome of great developer, from Faneuil Hall in Boston to leading mall developer to the city of Columbia, Maryland. And I was sitting in my office, my second year in the industry, and he came around the corner and said, "You're going to Boston with me tomorrow." And I said, "What for?" And he said, "Faneuil Hall." And I said, "What's Faneuil Hall?" He said, "Have you ever been in Boston?" I said, "One night on the way to Woodstock, my girlfriend and I got caught in that traffic jam and we reared off." And he said, "Well, when you're there, you ate in a restaurant where all the waitresses screamed at you." I said, "How would you know that?" And he said, "Anybody who's only had one night in Boston ate at Bergen Park, if you know, which is the city's most renowned restaurant." Anyway, the next morning, I'm walking with the head of development for the project, Jim Rouse, among 3 warehouses. And drunk strewn throughout, liquor bottles crashed to the ground from the night before's escapades. And Jim is walking in front of us in total euphoria saying, "In 3 years, this will be the greatest marketplace in the world." We're walking behind him doing this and laughing at him. Suddenly, he turns around and looks at us and says, "I know what you young ones are doing. Sit down on this bench. We got to give you a lesson." He said, "You're young of age and you're scared of where you're walking and looking down at cobblestones. I'm old and experienced, and I'm looking straight up at all the office towers saying, if this project is vital and is a postcard to all those office buildings, we make a lot of money by the end of lunch. We're going to make a lot of money by the end of the day." And his feasibility was pretty simple, pretty fantastic, and he gave me the appreciation for real feasibility analysis that could go much more depth. Unfortunately, Jim went on to something called Enterprise, where he tried the exact same type of product in Toledo, Ohio, Norfolk, Jacksonville, and a number of other places where he didn't have those office towers in the same proximity. And the feasibility proved itself. The second experience was working on Faneuil Hall. In the late night development meetings that went till 11:30, 12 o'clock, 3 a.m. from a 6 o'clock start. Kevin White was the incredible mayor of Boston. He would come over from City Hall around 7 o'clock at night after closing up for the day. He'd sit in the back of the room, which I always respected, got the lay of the land. And then, after about 20 minutes, he would come rushing forward, barge his way between people, jump on the table, and do an Irish jig. And he would scream at us and say, "I brought you here because you're creative. What the hell are you doing? This is boring. Come on, spark up." Real leadership out of government, and he was phenomenal of what he forced us into. Another government leader that I had a great experience working with was Neil Goldschmidt in the city of Portland, Oregon, where we were advisory for 6 administrations. It was after his term, but in a bar late one night, he told me about how you turn a disaster of a city to success. He was a young mayor, I believe still in his 20s or very early 30s. And he came in as a bulldozer, and somebody said, "Get a big Marriott Convention Hotel and we'll turn the city around." And he flew off and went to meet with J.W. Marriott, Businessman of the Year in America in the last 2 years, sat down in total awe of him in his office, and Marriott looked at him and said, "You could throw a bowling ball through the middle of Portland any time of the night. How do you think I can survive with a hotel product in that city?" And Neil did a terrific thing about comprehensive planning, not just one spark plug, and the need to really move the needle. Another quick story, Ricardo Poma, probably the wealthiest developer in Central America. We handled a lot of his development and planning for a number of years. But his first project was the oldest shopping center in Central America. It had been impinged on by poverty, being close to the inner city. There was suburban sprawl going. He had a big decision. It was the biggest shopping center in Central America at the time. And he was trying to decide whether to recapitalize it. This fantastic line to us that I'll never forget. "I only want to recapitalize this if you can get our wives back here. Can you get personal application and get the people who really care about it and evaluate it in that type of a way?" Another one of those epiphany moments, José Isaac Perez, probably the most aggressive developer in the world in Rio de Janeiro, has an incredible portfolio of shopping centers that we've never seen the traffic of this level through his shopping centers. We were working on one of his most successful, and he said he wanted to build a 4th level. I said, absolutely not. I don't believe in retail on 4 levels. I fought with him because we've done a lot of work in Asia. He said, I'm building, you're going to figure out what to do with it. The value of land that is successful. The realization that maybe we were too retail focused for too long. We studied like crazy, went through every project we've been involved in, found a situation where Walgreens was doing $800 a foot in a mall where they normally did about $80 a foot back in those days. We studied that there were medical office buildings surrounding the project. And then we realized that we did the research and found that when you come out of a doctor's appointment, even if you had good news, you're a prime person for mindless activity, shopping. The marriage was terrific. The 4th level has 140 operating specialists. It has an auditorium for pharmaceutical firms to come in and present to them, which may be the most productive real estate space in the Americas. It has insurance offices and everything else. It is probably the highest performing real estate in retail in the Americas right now. The thought, how do we marry and how do we make it more than just polo shirts and Apple computers? That all said, those were the opportunities, but I admit to really great concern right now as I travel around. When I'm in the development boardrooms lately, I've got to admit, I too often feel like I'm in the Kodak boardroom 8 years ago. I feel like we are trying to shove our past product on a new generation. And I feel terrific levels of disconnect that really concern me. Are we moving with the population all the way around? We are too much of a 1 + 1 + +1 industry, a tenuous industry with questionable career aspiration. We are heavy middle age with people wanting to get their out and finish careers. But are we taking enough look at where we have to move the needle to make this industry vital again for sake of University of Florida aspirants in real estate careers and others? We're an industry right now that has seen a lot of mayhem, a disconnect between our key players. Developers, lenders, tenants, buyers, governments. Is there really a marriage? Are we cooperating? To me, it sort of goes to that wonderful story of the 2 guys who are out in the woods and they're hiking away, and all of a sudden they see the world's most ferocious bear come at them. He's about 50 yards off. One of them turns around and starts running. The other one sits down on a log and starts putting on his running shoes. And the first one says, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? We gotta get out of here." And the first one says, "No, I just have to outrun you." That's pretty well been the alignment of all of the resources in this industry. How do we shove it back and forth? We're in a quickly restructuring world. We have to take a look at whether we're the past or the future, and the future is truly today. There's no argument about it. Do we have the vision necessary going? Are we working with the right resources? Do we have the right alignments, marriages to the resources? The energy to get us to the future vitality to support a great industry. Look at what's going on in every other industry. Is our product moving with it at the same pace? Wayne Gretzky, as the greatest of hockey players virtually, said, "A good hockey player plays where the puck is. A great hockey player plays where the puck is going to be." How many in the industry are moving to where the puck's going to be? You've talked a lot in the last few sessions about economics. There's no doubt we've been through an economic quake, but that's not the impact. That's a piece of the impact we've been through. We've been through socioquake. We've been through a letdown in the educational system, that's questionable, the financial problems, we've been through the job problems, we've been through infrastructure issues, we've been through lots. And when this all came out and I predicted the future of our company, that was my concern, was it was holistic. But let's go back and talk about economic quake for a few minutes. The real, again, the economy is a mixed bag. It's going to remain complex for a very long period. One of our concerns as we work with economists around the world is we've learned to sort it out. Get worried. Fortunately, we've had very good economists speaking here. But watch those critical words, I think. That's not the real economists. We want to watch the ones that say the research says. Our two favorites, inarguable, Paul Krugman and Oriel Rabini. They can be hard to swallow because they're point blank forward, but they've been on target to everything that's happened over the last 6 years, and they have offered solutions and backed it with figures of where we need to head. What's the real of economics right now? Today, and I certainly appreciated all of Sam Shannon's comments. I thought they were quite terrific. But the holistic perspective of what's going on, the complexity, is we have a unique, weird world of extreme capital glut. But we have a totally jammed, dysfunctional distribution of capital and, amazingly, a capital-constrained populace. Total mismatches. How do we bring that back together? What are our movements? What is this industry's role moving forward? You've heard a lot of figures. Let me throw some others at you that get right to the problem of consumption and where things are going. Chrysler employees are making $14 an hour versus $28 a few years ago. What's happening to spending power? I'll talk in a few minutes about one of my biggest fears, the pending huge-scale government layoffs. What's coming out of our populist spending? The fact that there's a huge disparity of college grad starting salaries right now from a few years ago. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the amount of money out of housing valuations. Yes, it's rebounding, but there's still a disparity. Underemployment, how many people are back? I haven't seen. We tried to search for that figure. What is that total curtailment of spending power for people coming back in the labor force underemployed? What is the impact of spending power decline from an escalation from 3 to 7.8% unemployment? Some of the reality, the average household in America today is 8.9% below where it was in 1999 in spending power. That's a pretty severe hit. How do you get fluidity of higher rents? How do you get fluidity of purchasing a product? Other issues out there. Great quote from Joe Hulsley, the vice chairman of U.S. Bank, finishing a major industry meeting. He had listened to the pontification of the developers, of the retailers, and everybody else. And he then said, everyone's focused on economic norms, not on the non-norm impacts. They're monsters. They have huge implication to where this economy is headed. Yes, a Sandy retail does jump because there has to be replenishment of goods. But the drought implications, as he pointed out, on an economically constrained populace, we're ignoring one of the biggest catastrophes in the history of finance, the LIBOR situation. Right now, it's being diverted in London. I talk to economists, I talk to a lot of capital sources, but everybody says that is very scary. We have clawback suits that are filed in almost every country in the world that could jam judicial process and jam financial scrutiny of future deals. What's the cost of environmental catastrophes, military interventions that we aren't prepared to have reserves for? Continuing on, caution, and I thought it was a great comment out of one very objective analyst. She pointed out that across America we see headlines from analysts that shape thought for the next 20 minutes or 5 days. But interestingly enough, they aren't national comments because almost all analysis, all analyst population is in the Northeast. Are they relating? to what's happening in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Cincinnati, Ohio, or Pierre, North Dakota. There's estimates by several analysts right now that political lunacies in this country will cost us 150 basis points of GDP this year. And we're being held hostage, as Sam talked about a few minutes ago, in our quest for vitality. The logic of the greatest flight to quality should be the process right now. It was happening. In the last few weeks, there's a diversion where people are moving away from quality in real estate, thinking there's uptick potential in smaller markets and C properties, with a very questionable compensation for the risk differential. How far is this going to go? I don't know. It's pretty scary to us as we assess properties that we're involved in. The U.S. solidity economically is much predicated on an unanticipated best, mostly bad in the world. We are the strongest developed economy, but the underdeveloped economy are taking over consumption very, very quickly, and we've got to figure out our niche, our role for vitality moving forward. And, of course, the biggest challenge of all, the real, that there's a fiscal cliff, it seems like, almost every month that threatens our collapse. How do we assess that? At this point, with some levity, with the thought that it looks a little like this. We're going to go over, and then we'll continue riding. We just can't deal with it anymore. We've got to start looking at the future because we're being held hostage by political hijinks. That all said, and I'm sorry to be blunt, forceful on problems we're seeing ahead, I have great fondness for economists. They're good friends. But I also have to go very often to the wonderful line of Oscar Wilde that if you laid all the economists head to toe, you wouldn't reach conclusion. If you don't know, Harry Truman had his own concern about economists. He said he only wanted to talk to a one-handed one because they're forever saying on one hand, it's going to do this, on the other hand, it's going to do that. Well, we've got to stop looking at just the charts of what's happened and start looking forward. And I thought Sam Shannon was quite terrific and Glazer yesterday was quite great. But there's another major shoe out there that we are trembling over right now in all of our work with developers and cities. Detroit, Harrisburg, San Bernardino, Illinois are not idiosyncrasies, they're precursors. Cities, local governments, states are in deep trouble financially. Yes, Republicans and a lot of people want to talk about the pensions, and that's a huge issue. I'm not negating it. But there's another issue nobody seems to want to talk about. They don't have a structured revenue stream that can keep things going. They don't have systems that are functioning right now. We have police departments in America in several cities that are open 9 to 5 days a week. In Detroit, firefighters acknowledged a few weeks ago they haven't been able to get toilet paper for the last 4 months for their places. That's how basic it gets. But then it goes to a lot of other issues. The fact that one city was evicted from their firehouse. The total focus on expenses, not on revenues. We got monstrous layoffs coming in local government sector. We're going to have services challenges as population and certainly as developers and owners of property. We're going to have support issues to function going forward. Yeah, you're mad at the planning guy, but how would you like to not have to try and navigate stuff and support you? We're sweeping a ton of stuff under the rug right now. As Sam Shannon talked about, we got to start dealing with something. We got to force it. We got to work with politicians and say, this can't keep going. There's one good reel out there. One great analyst reported last week, we've had the lowest sustained interest rate since the 13th century. What's it produced? Almost every investment capital group I know of right now is saying raise the interest rates. Allow consumers earned income on their savings. That was a part of the formula taken out. We need to move this economy. We have operated fine at 5 to 7%, and with the fluidity of the consumer. Right now, we don't have enough fuel in this economy to move the needle to the productivity to start construction to the level that we want it to move to. It's pretty cloudy out there, inarguably. There are peaks of sunshine. There are some great figures. The housing numbers are intriguing. The rebound in jobs of the right direction is very, very favorable. But as professionals in this room, in this industry, we're still walking in rain, and it's still slippery, and we've got to be careful. We've got to have real caution of where we're headed. Add on one more reel of economics. Very, very important to everything that I've heard. I thought Sam Shandon sort of separated up in very right comments, and I was excited. I have been talking macro. I don't really agree with it. There is no such thing as a world or American economy anymore. Let's get realistic. There are local, regional, environment economies. What does Detroit, Michigan have to do with Miami, Florida anymore? San Jose, California has an average income of almost $69,000, Myrtle Beach, $30,000. Again, we have separate nodes that are the real economies, and we've got to start tailoring our thoughts. Let's talk about Florida, because I certainly have hit you very hard talking the macro. I feel totally different. I talked about that dark, dreary day in 2005. Part of that conversation to my staff was, I'm moving. It's time for me to have quality of life. I want to continue working somewhat. Where's the best place to go? I'm going to start touring the country, and I want you to start doing the analysis of the strongest places going forward economically. There's terrific diligence over the next few months. Where did we come out? 2 vital markets, or 3, in this country that are very, very dynamic in our assessment. I've had 2 major corporations with great global land holdings agree with me in senior meetings. Washington, D.C., with the world's biggest contractor, impenetrable. It's going to continue to move ahead very strongly. The other 2, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Miami, Florida. Now I'm talking to South Florida. Obviously, residually, as Sam has pointed out, the strength of Florida overall is very good. We rate those as the lemonade markets. The lemon market, and I toured it, and tried, and I lived there after graduation from college. California, who wants to deal with that? As Sam Shannon said, the main thing going on there is trying to figure out how to get out. And we have a few ice water markets. They're cooled down right now. They're refreshing right now. They're called Dallas, Houston, Oklahoma City, and Denver. The rest of the country, very gray, dark gray in the Rust Belt as we try to figure out how to move it forward. The Florida market, again, I thought Sam Shannon did a great job talking about the fabulous potential. We have desirable urban environments, many throughout the state. He talked about we're going to pass New York in population. Are we trying to achieve what's possible with our centrality in the great Western market, the great Americas market? We have extraordinary tourism opportunities. Our strategic geography. Yes, people talk about China, but most in industry are terribly uncomfortable. They're very worried about the problems of India and how to work in a very tough country in its social dynamics. Latin America is the rainbow right now to most. We have good global capital accessibility because how many of those sources are living here now? We have strong, diverse workforce. And diversity is a major conversation in every corporate boardroom in the world right now. And we have that mix in most cities. We have stronger demand fundamentals in most areas. Inarguably, quality of life that has been favorably adjusted in cost of living. Transportation infrastructure In certain areas, we're very strong. What we need is the right push on education. What are our real needs going forward? A much more aggressive economic development recruitment effort. I'm a Midwesterner. I spent a lot of my life there. If I was head of a company and looking at the dynamics that I could reach into Latin America more efficiently, still get global access, get the diverse workforce of Florida, and get my quality of life up, I would seriously look at a move in Florida, and I think 90% of executives could look at it. We need the education, technology, transportation, infrastructure investment to make us not good, but stronger than anywhere else. I've been involved in the visioning process in the city of Fort Lauderdale and fighting hard to make Fort Lauderdale the Boston of the South, the downtown of the city. It's been a hard message to get across. But boy, we've got 3 colleges there. They do a terrific job if we can move that needle. And more important than anything else, marry even more to Latin America. This economic strength of Brazil, where I've worked very much, is unbelievable right now. Yeah, they're going to have blips, they're going to have corrections, but they're rebuilding a dated infrastructure to a contemporary country at unbelievable pace. They have the World Cup and Olympics ahead of them to force them to do it quickly. And it's followed by the biggest oil strike in decades to fuel their economy for decades. We need to marry as strongly as we can to that region. Summary, Florida, to me, needs to secede from the United States mentally, not legally. We need leadership that runs what's possible with this economy, not worry about the American economy right now. If there's a rainbow in the American economy, it is Florida right now. Let's move on to real estate and talk about the application of all of this chaos to real estate. We have been inarguably stalled, stuck in mud. We've shrunk as an industry. ICSC membership went from 66,000 to 32. It's now rebounding back into the 50s. ULI likewise. We have fought for survival for the last few years. But what are the residuals? What's going on? What do I see? Being very honest, in a great share of companies, we're under-managing. We're under-recapitalizing property. We're under-conceiving. We have less than the aspiration that I see when I work on projects in other areas of the world. It is, how do we shape from the pro forma at every turn, not how do we shape a product that moves forward. And more than anything, we are incredibly under-researched. I have said for a long time that I can't imagine going with the people who say, I think, versus the research says. But it's happening in this industry. Every research professional I know is doing 50% or 25% of the work they were doing a few years ago. I was very impressed with the great work coming out of the Bergstrom School. It's quite terrific. Our universities are pumping out great knowledge. ICSC is doing terrific webinars. In an organization of 50,000, how many people do you think are online listening to the free webinars or low cost? 35 to 120. I checked on it yesterday. We're worried about the next deal, the next lending, etc. But are we looking at how to reshape this industry? I took the charts from your last report and applied the same arrows to management, research, and recapitalization. Recapitalization gets a little credit, but it's still tough. Again, we've been opportunity constrained. As Sam Shannon talked about, we're starting to move the needle. We need to open the minds. We've been focused on the next project, the next tenant. We had tens of thousands of people in our industry thought they were going to be the next workout specialists. They didn't understand the spreads that the banks could have held the properties, and they did. As an industry, looking back on my career in the early parts, We've gone from an artistry industry to a production industry, a rollout of real estate product, from qualitative to quantitative totally. Do I think that's wrong? No, it's the evolution of almost any product cycle. But it needs balance. We need a middle ground. If you talk about leaders right now, I'm fond of them, these friends, Sam Zell. This types of quotes. Liquidity equals value. Everything comes down to liquidity. Everything comes down to exit strategies. Everything comes down to knowing when you get in and how you're going to get out. That's one of his most lauded quotes. What about the product we're building and the conceivement of it? What about its connectivity to the marketplace? Again, wasn't that the history of a company called Kodak? We're out there right now. We've been in real challenge. The issue is the bridge is taking shape. The clouds are clearing. Can we connect to new projects that really start to stimulate the leading companies into the world, the right population, the educational institutes into our web all the way around? Corporate thought is out there of how to reshape. Jeff Immelt, the top executive of GE, he couldn't predict when the recession would end. Many think it is over, or how bad it will be, but said the global economic crisis has fundamentally reset the way companies do business and capitalism itself. I'm not negating the need for financial pragmatism, but I'm saying we got to get stimulated thought into that process. Howard Schultz went through some great turbulence with a phenomenal company called Starbucks. He retired, watched it go astray, and then came back with a quote. We've had to make a series of decisions when he came back into the job, in retrospect, have led to the watering down of the Starbucks experience and what some might call the commoditization of the brand. We've got to look at stimulated thought that shape the product and opportunity of our industry. Are we going to go back to the excitement of greenfield days? Not very quickly. Our urban infrastructure is falling very far behind, and now we've got the turbulence of how do we manage it from governance. It's opportunity. It's right in front of it. The best quote I've heard in the last 5 years is a no-brainer. Are we overbuilt or under-demolished? It's incredible potential for everybody in this room, for the entirety of the real estate industry. We need, desperately, America needs that rebuilding. Many cities are in deep trouble, and our industry has a skill set to help them, to move that needle. Cities can benefit with the right marriage, with the right cooperation levels, by becoming master developers. We need them in that role. They've got to deal with the infrastructure complexities. They've got to be friendly to that. We can team to make our country strong again. Our greatest assets are cities strong again, and our industry vital again. I've been using a quote that I strongly believe in, I'm going to talk about for a few minutes. In great cities, neighborhoods mature. In bad cities, they age. Think about the vitality of Chicago. Think about the city I'm from originally, Detroit. Lincoln Park, Miracle Mile, keep going on. Try to name the strength of the inner city Detroit neighborhoods. They aged, they crumbled. Right now, they are doing ruins tours in Detroit. And I have said repeatedly, I grew up in the greatest city in the world, the Detroit of the 50s and 60s. Real needs, commitment to leading edge projects, catching up to another product, to the other product of the world, all the way around. Several months ago in Abu Dhabi, we worked out of this building. I had an incredible team with me. We laughed at it at first, but God, was it inspiring? And did it juice the people going towards it? What would Apple and Microsoft say about those types of facilities? What's going on in the Middle East with the signature architects when you go over to this type of hotel? And now they're working on this building. Yeah, their example of the ego building of the Middle East, but they allow the imagination to start wandering and question, what can buildings be in the future? Not form kits, but inspiration to leading companies that are the expansion vitality of industry. Another issue out there, I hate to do this, but I was invited up here and I'm a guest. But are we conceiving product with the right people? Is our industry shaped right? I was astounded that the 50-50 portion of male-female is 87% male in this room right now. Are we moving with the customer and understanding them all the way around? Move to consumer cultural quick and the dynamic of that. GAP just did a terrific board meeting for us about their cultural diversity programs. Are we putting enough emphasis on all of our potentials and looking at where product is developable, where the real need is? This will shock everybody as it did us. The African American economy in the United States is bigger than the total economy of India. The Hispanic economy is larger than that of Korea, Mexico, Australia, Brazil, or Russia. There's a lot of money in our cultural diversity. The Asian population, a very small segment, is bigger than the economy of Switzerland, Belgium, or Sweden. Are we looking at how to attach, how to move with these populations? Their buying power's jumping like crazy. The growth of African American population since 1990, 258% increase in buying power. Asians, 495%. Hispanics, 527%. Americans, or Anglos, 178. We've got a reordering of the marketplace all the way around. We've got to recognize the great potential of ethnicities going forward. Can neighborhoods mature? Is it really that complicated of a process? Let me describe a few projects we've been involved in. I talked earlier about Metro Central in El Salvador, in the heart of the city of San Salvador. It was the oldest shopping center. It was dead center in the middle of the city. We looked at it and we studied, as we always do, the entirety of the neighborhood. We always say, stop looking at your demising line as your property line. Look at your neighbors. How do we attach and how do we make the property move to the vitality of the neighborhood? This developer also owned the 5-star Intercontinental Hotel across the street. Crime was rampant. The neighborhood was changing demographics, and this great line, I only want to recapitalize if we can get our lives back. Dated facility. We study every dynamic from emerging population economics to car registrations to transportation overall. We looked at a very complex shopping center built in 9 stages over decades. We created relationship areas, created an urban specialty frontage to it. We created a traditional mall, an entertainment complex, and a cultural center to the project. Today, that project, first of all, the earn back, the role of capital, was 26 months for recovery because we staged it. Secondly, the project itself is up over 300% performances, but more importantly, the valuation of the mile around it, the property is up over 300%. It has been a terrific success in reinvigorating the neighborhood. Recapitalizations come from all kinds of sources. A crazy project many years ago, Nova America, a dated mill in Rio de Janeiro, in a very dangerous portion of the city. It was a future connection of the subway and the highway. The potential we assessed was very good. It was 9 miles from Ipanema where the golf was. This had senior citizens strewn out in the street, strong. Highly Catholic country, families with 5 to 6 kids at home, no women in the workforce, a lot of gang warfare and everything else. We conceived the first successful, major success, manufacturer outlet center outside of the United States there. as an interim step until it got the connectivity of the subway and the highway. We then came back in and turned it into a traditional mall, fighting a mile away without the highway frontage, the leading mall in the very dynamic Rio de Janeiro market. The project was named the best project in Rio de Janeiro, a very vital market, several years in a row. But the big story was what we added, a 7,000 student university on the second level, a major medical project. I looked out the first day and said, can we acquire all of the favela housing around here? They said that would take so many attorneys, so tough. Today they're trying to figure out how to do it. We've driven a restaurant boulevard through the middle of the mall that is incredibly successful and added a lot of other facilities, and today it is a mixed-use district. And the neighborhood, again, has escalated considerably financially. More local, downtown Pensacola. We were called in a few years ago, 7 years ago, to do a study of how to turn around the lowest occupancy downtown in the state of Florida. A survey last February, treating that as a neighborhood, figuring out all the functional issues, figuring out the improvement and everything, and it, as of last February, it's the highest occupancy of all real estate classes in the state of Florida, 87%. Valuations up 170% plus, even with the downturn of the economy. Is it perfect? No, it's got a lot of work, but it's moving in the right direction and bringing great vitality to that city. So if we start to deal with the neighborhoods, of course the success of Portland and Oregon, which has been inarguable, is a terrific experience. Real opportunities to go out, not work on simply how to put an apartment building, but how to tie together and work with academic communities to build our infrastructure and then do the air rights, which we've done. How to start creating research corridors and buying and land banking properties around what we're working on. How do we start to create industry-targeted cities, which the Dubai model was founded on? Information city, media city, education city, health city, etc. How do we look at ethnicity-prompted types of development? Need for real feasibility. The diligence. We had a wild experience about a year and a half ago now, or early last January, a year ago. We got calls from 4 equity firms who we'd done a lot of work for a decade prior. We hadn't heard from them in quite a while. And they said, how much time do you have? And I said, well, what's going on? They said, we didn't need you. We didn't need your cost for the last decade. We could hand any paper over and get any money. It's not like that anymore. We need the diligence. We've got too many people internally reviewing everything. We need to get back to real feasibility. We have had a product of feasibility that is straight line economics of what the pent-up spending power is within the neighborhood, not going to the diligence of study that deals with what the market composition changes will be in the future. We can project that. What project endurance, what the risk analysis is, what's the exact design needs, what are the servicing needs of the different types of retail classes? Do we really match up and can we be primary? What are the amenity needs? And we need feasibility that feeds directly into the pro forma, so we know the sacrifice made by different decisions of value engineering. We can do that. This is the depth of just the index of reports we produce, and there's others out there that are doing incredible diligence, but people aren't even using it right now. Risk assessment, best use analysis, market timing are changing the entire investment strategy and making it a lot more cautionary. Technology quake, of course, huge to the dynamic. I'm older generation, I have enough trouble. I mean, my VCR, I never got it past 0 o'clock, I've got to admit it. And the adjustment of a world of electrifying ideas. It's every place. Every place we turn, business models are changing. Try and get a cashier at Winn-Dixie today, a live one. America is finally starting to take the credit card at the table in restaurants, 15 years after I saw it in Brazil. There are floating billboards in Shanghai going down the Bund district. Is this New York City? No, this is a Shanghai average neighborhood with these mobile boards. Technology is changing how we service, how we express ourselves, and of course the QR invasion, which has terrific applicability to what we are doing in so many ways. Are we looking at it enough? TechnoQuake is not just the kid refusing to give up the iPhone. It's the hot item of the next season for your retail tenants, for sure. It's the cost efficiency of our building maintenance driving better NOI, better tenant acceptance of expense structure. It's a new design feature adding wow to any real estate right now. It's keeping up with the Joneses, or the Trumps, the Macy's, the Tata from India. And it's how we communicate to our next generation customer. Moving to retail real estate quick, and the dynamics there. What retailer ranked first in customer service in a major research study in 2012? Anyone want to guess? Somebody want to say Nordstrom? The usual answer? Not Kohl's either. Amazon.com. The first 6 highest rated customer service retail organizations were .coms. Kohl's came in 7th. Internet sales have grown incredibly, obviously. And I'm going to move very quickly through this because I'm running a little later than expected. Real bricks and mortar issues, the sector with the most severe overbuilding in real estate, inarguably. We have enough retail in America today to service 900 million people, and we only have 330 million. We have a big need for a lot of scraping and a lot of reuse. Internet is, of course, escalating the speed on that need. One of the wildest dynamics out there to me, sitting in ICSC board meetings, is 2 years ago, there was celebration among all the developers at the table because they heard CapEx was back in retail budgets. They didn't hear the finish of the sentence. It's being used for e-commerce, not for bricks and mortar. We are 87 to 93% of the sales equity of real retail, bricks and mortar. But over 70% is going to e-commerce. Something's dysfunctional. How do we start marketing ourselves better to the retailer and make them recognize our value to their formula? We have a lot of data shopping center product. Retailers are just starting the technology integration all the way around. We're very scared about F&B right now. It's an incredibly tough margin challenge. The commodities escalation, the health insurance pass on. It's drastically overexpanded during the slowdown. What restaurant chain didn't expand dramatically? The chains are now so aggressive, plus food trucks, the amount of ethnic proliferation, we have a very overexpanded category. Now being impinged on by promotional pricing, suicide by several. Talking to Darden, they've told me how scared they are. They have to go into the pricing game. How do you keep margin? How do you stay alive? We got to realize a great share of America's retail is staying vital through their global expansion and their licensing, hitting their bottom line. Darden is going to open hundreds of units in China as their expansion. Numbers of others are going likewise around the world. We got a whole new world of consumption hierarchy that's challenging American prominence as the market. High fashion is being redesigned, restructured to today's world. Remember the vanilla box of fashion, a simple build-up. Today, it's the drama, foreign planned obsolescence, high obsolescence retailers like H&M and Zara, dramatizing and going into the higher income niches very strongly. We have a new generation of retail volume understanding. We were so celebratory about $600 a foot out of a Ralph Lauren store. Now each Apple store brings in $278 per hour. New metrics. We may as well call Ann Taylor Auntie Anne's without the Roma. Real retailers are very scared of 2013. I don't know if you've looked at the calendar yet. It is boggling. They didn't successfully process the longest possible holiday season that we just passed through. They had a lot of trouble with it. They're still trying to understand merchandising on Thanksgiving Day. Interestingly enough, this coming calendar has a uniqueness we will never again see in history. Hanukkah is uniquely on Thanksgiving this year. The 26th holiday season in 1913 versus 32 days last year. We're going from the longest to the shortest. We have one less holiday weekend. It's a huge concern. Real leasing issues. Licensing will come to the U.S. It's the dominant form of real estate leasing around the world. We're going to see mega retailers buying up many brands and bringing them into the U.S. Terrific opportunity. The interesting part, when I was an executive at Federated Department Stores, and we talked about taking the product and licensing it in Dubai, tremors went through the building from Howard Goldfeder, our chairman. We'll never turn our brand and its integrity over to those people. Today, these companies have developed better operators than the retailer themselves. And companies like Mohammed Al-Shaya own 180 brands. It started in the Middle East, he's now in Turkey, he's now in Russia, and he's moving these brands around the world. They're a big part of our leasing dynamic moving forward. We're going to see mutual threshold kickouts starting very soon. We're convinced of that. We're certainly negotiating that. Non-performance, we want to walk, you want us to walk. It's going to be the way of life. Co-tenancy is going to grow, much more important in negotiations. And less than A markets are going to have a tough time attracting any specialty tenants per the internet. The leasing dynamics, the drama of it, selling your product. This is 15 years ago in the Middle East. This is a leasing center for a project. How dramatic are we? A brochure and a site plan in many cases. New retail real estate products out there. There's two we see coming on. One of them certainly will be very strong here, actually both. Transit facilitated retail is very, very hot. And the other, we think coming on very strong, playground shopping centers. Shopping centers that are just the mirth, the fun of going out and entertaining yourself for the day. Get ready for a whole new world of retailers rushing at us. Where's our focus got to be? Of course, we've got to worry about 7-Eleven. We've got to worry about the dollar stores and everything else. But globalization, it's going to bring us a huge new inventory. I'm just flashing quickly through. Certainly some of the European retailers have already jumped at us, but there's so many others coming at us. Porterfield, Tempe, expansion of Mango, Stelio. The wealth of retailers coming out of Latin America, Luigi Bertoli, an incredible men's and women's store out of Rio de Janeiro. Dozens of others that I'll quickly flash through. This is the inventory we will see crossing borders. Food tenants, great restaurants that we're already seeing headlines about, Brazilian restaurants. Mexican retailers, very vital, moving across borders. Even grocery stores, a new invigorated level of retailing. It's one of the strongest categories of Central America and some great potential. Global tenant mixes are on us. We've got to start celebrating global diversity and what they bring. Real future, retail real estate needs. We need to start inventorying complementary alternative uses to shrink the retail product percentage. That's an argument. Again, 900 million people, sufficiency of retail when we only have 300. We've got to stay focused as professionals on the globalization tracking of the retailers. We're working on that every minute we can. Mixed real estate use applications to garment customers and further return potential. We found out the benefits of medical, giving the person a beeper to circulate between tests. We found out the benefits of colleges and being able to put bars and more food services into our projects. Government acceptance of it helped towards smart development progression. We need that. We've got to be able to change the codes on these properties. Ethnicity merchandising opportunities, which are going to be phenomenal. We've got to know and engage technology, and one of the biggest things we've got to do is appreciate how tough it is to start a business, how comprehensive it is. And we've got to get into more and better startup business efforts. Where to now? As I close, go back to those people I told you about who were the epiphanies of my early career. Jim Rouse, Kevin White, Neil Goldschmidt, Ricardo Poma. Demand, feasibility, astuteness. We need to assure we're about real estate, not fantasy estate. The assurance has to be done through stringent enough feasibility to assure we are about demand. I see 3 products that I try to discipline our staff to. 1, real market demand. Is there a niche missing? Is it underserviced? If not, I'm not against prompted competitive obsolescence. We have created the strategies to put another mall, another strip center out of business. Figure it out, the rollover of their leases and the timing to pull them out. Or new product information, dramatic architecture that brings the catalyst companies to us. We've got a plan for the future is now. Thank you. Thank you.